Good evening. This is the first in my ghost story series. This first one is one that I've written myself. It's called Never Forget. Alan Howe drove exactly as the signs requested him. No faster and no slower. He had never, if he had recalled correctly, broken the law in his life. Well, that was at least as he saw it anyway. Did speeding tickets count? So what if he had run a few miles an hour over the limit? It wasn't as if the young boy racers were any better. He despised them as they swept past in their modified Minis and Fiat Puntos, tearing up the traffic with the snarl of a souped-up engine that sodomised his ears with their clamour. He swore as he was overtaken by a Ford Mustang that had been decorated with ridiculous flames down to its flanks, and swore again as the spray from the heavy rain on the motorway hit his already struggling windscreen with a fresh deluge. His face was set in a fixed scowl. His journey home along the motorway was not one of the more pleasant ones that existed to the poor souls that commuted along the Acheron-Black Ring Road, as it covered quite a lot of the city's circumference. Alan Howe was an old-fashioned type. He intensely disliked technology, such as iPods, iPhones and i-whatevers. His new car was, as his trendy young colleague at work would say, totally tricked out. Alan had no time for the slang of the up-and-coming youth of today. It was these youths who were threatening to oust him from his job at Gower Engineering, which he had held proudly for nearly 15 years. Oh, we didn't meet anybody who was below the age of 30. To Alan, the term youths was restricted to the smirking little shits who wore novelty ties and sat in coffee shops with their laptops, hoping desperately somebody would notice them in their flash new touch-screen jobby. All of this without a shred of irony. Alan had never met the right woman, either. He saw women rather like a debit on a bank statement, specifically as a drain on resources that he had had no real time for. Not everyone wanted a woman, he mused. Somebody in his office was gay. What was that all about, anyway? He changed lanes and gear, straining his eyes to see the next sign looming up out of the greyness. Alan had some miles to go yet before his turn-off came. All he wanted to do at this stage was to go back to his nice quiet flat and reheat the quite excellent chili he had made up for himself the night before, and had enough for a second portion tonight. It was waiting, cling filmed up back in his refrigerator. One would probably assume from this that he was a very boring man, but Alan laughed at them. He had plenty of hobbies. Cooking, rambling and collecting antiquarian books were just some of his interests. Alan also liked to travel and was considering for a move to the Dordogne region with a little white house nestled among the vineyards, where, with any luck, he would just be left alone. He had earned well enough in his lifetime to do it. In fact, the torrential, unforgiving downpour that seemed to be trying to tear his car to pieces was near as damn it making his mind up for him. To calm himself, Alan fumbled in the glove compartment for a barley sugar. He liked barley sugars. It was one of the few specific things that calmed his often rage-filled brain. The radio was quietly purring away on Classic FM, and shortly thereafter the melodic sounds of Beethoven filled the car. Alan smiled to himself. He loved Beethoven, and decided as a little test for himself to see if he could correctly guess the symphony. It really took him back, and almost made him forget the endless road and the roar of traffic. He frowned as he tried to remember where he had first heard it. It was annoying, he thought, when you couldn't remember where you first heard a song or piece of music. Beethoven had been a relatively new discovery for him. Everyone had told him he had to listen to Beethoven, and for that precise reason he had avoided it. Yes, it was Symphony 6. Alan, you sly dog, he congratulated himself. Of course it was the Pastoral. He tried to enjoy it, but for no reason he could imagine, it just made him uncomfortable. Deep in the pit of his stomach, he felt something. Hearing it all now, all he could think of were lights. Swirling lights. It was an unpleasant sensation, and shortly he found himself shifting around in the upholstered leather of his car seat. In fact, it felt rather like he was going to be sick. No, it wasn't the right time for this piece of music, not at all. He quickly tapped the preset button on the radio, and it switched to an acoustic number that was of no interest, but at least did not give him that awful feeling of nausea. How ridiculous. A piece of beautiful music like that, and it made him feel quite ill. It was as he was settling down from this, he was suddenly jerked hard in his seat. With no warning, his brakes locked all at once. The dashboard flickered, and Alan jerked the clutch hard, twisted the wheel, stomped on the brake pedal, anything to stop the vehicle careering across the water-slick motorway. Car horns blared all around him as, panic-stricken, Alan wrestled for the control of his car. For some reason, the bloody brakes were stuck. He tried and tried to disengage them, but they were locked rigid and the car was not responding to him. Bastard bloody technology. He mentally screamed as he twisted the wheel, and the car swerved down the motorway before it slid off onto the hard shoulder. The car, now slower but still out of control, ground onto the motorway barrier and came to rest after 20 seconds of metallic grinding, then stopped with a spine-crunching jerk and a bang that was likely from the fender. Then there was only silence. For a while, Alan was motionless. He stared straight ahead, holding the wheel in a death grip. As time passed, his heart began to slow a little and he discovered the movement had come back to his body. He released the wheel, fingers burning as knots of muscle jarringly unclenched. Looking over himself, he saw no damage. Despite an aching neck, he suspected he had little more than whiplash and a slight case of shock. Truthfully, he was more concerned about the car. When he was finally able to lift his shaking hands, he opened the door with some effort and on jelly-like legs climbed into the rain to inspect the damage. Alan groaned inwardly. The impact had not been too hard, but Gower would not be impressed with the damage done by this little fender bender. Paintwork had scraped off in great chunks. The silver bodywork scraped into an ugly grey scar. The bonnet was battered too, a wickedly sharp dent warping its right flank. The right indicator was also smashed. Hopefully he could at least drive it very slowly home, so that he was not stranded on that vile motorway for hours on end until a breakdown man arrived. Shakily climbing out of the driving rain back into his car, Alan tried the ignition. Nothing. Repeated attempts accompanied with dire provocations had no result either. The dreary fall of rain reflected his sullen frame of mind. Sighing miserably, he took his company smartphone and called the breakdown service used by his company. He did not want to know about this prang. He didn't want anyone to know about it.